Welcome to the Rock the Stage Show. Each week, international media expert Rich Bontrager has in-depth and personal conversations with celebrities, top leaders, authors, speakers, and media professionals. Now, from the Rock the Stage studios, here's your host, the Trigger, Rich Bontrager.
Welcome to the Rock the Stage Show, Sunday night, once again, 7 o'clock. We're back again to give an in-depth conversation with actually global leaders tonight. We're going to spin the globe, go around from the United States to the UK, and we're going to get into amazing, deep conversation. And as we launch off into 2025, we're going to tackle a tough subject today. But stick around. It gets much, much better. On average, 24 people per minute get abused. That's right. 24 people every minute get abused around the world. Over 12 million women and men each year get abused. Now, as we know, recovery is not easy. 81% of women say it's an ongoing process, and 5% of women say they've made little to no progress in recovery because there's trauma, there's pain, there's memories, there's so much more. But tonight we have a lady who has moved through that, moved forward through the trauma, the abuse, and now she openly speaks about it. And she has actually moved on to an amazing career as well. So you're going to stick around tonight and hear what's going on with this amazing lady. The daughter of wealthy parents, Debra had used the Cloak of Invisibility to escape the cruelty and abuse. It took a nervous breakdown and breakthrough for Debra to triumph over a legacy of childhood trauma, discover how she had a voice to share her unique story, and provide a platform to share those voices and messages with the world. We're going to hear about how she's done that as well. Welcome to the Rock the Stage show tonight, Debra Blackman, all the way from Europe in the UK. Welcome, Debra.
Oh, welcome, Rich, and to your wonderful audience. It's an absolute privilege and a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you.
And what a way to kick off 2025. We're tackling one of the biggest life issues we could possibly do. And I think it's great to just knock off the year and say, we're not going to hide. We're actually going to talk about tough stuff.
Oh, totally. And I'm an open book because if you'd have caught me a few years ago, it would have been, a totally different person than you see before you today. And I am so eternally thankful that I had the privilege of having a nervous breakthrough, as I call it, because that's what it was, to actually recalibrate. We can go into that in more detail, but yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and the term that really got me hooked on you, and we did talk about this several weeks ago, but the Cloak of Invisibility. I think that's the most coolest, greatest term because people do want to hide. They don't want to talk. They don't want to step out in the light and really say the full truth. But you've done that. But back up a little bit and talk about the Cloak of Invisibility, how that impacts people's lives.
Well, thank you. Yes. And this is something which, being an abuse and trauma survivor from childhood, I learned very early on that to be unseen, to be unheard, to be no one, no thing was the best possible outcome for me, because then I wouldn't be targeted for the abuse. It was a very strange, surreal experience, but obviously it was the lived experience. I didn't know anything different. So I thought everybody lived like me, because this had been going on from before my own memory. Both of my parents, I believe, had mental illness. They're no longer with us, and I have forgiven them. And we can go into that in more detail as well.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But the one thing is that Cloak of Invisibility was my protector early on. And that became my friend. That became my companion. Because when you live in a world of the abuse, your perpetrators are locking you into secrecy. They don't want you to talk to anybody for obvious reasons.
Yes.
For fear, mine was being punished if I said anything, or that I was the one who had made all of this happen. So why would I want to tell people what a bad person I was? So in a little child's brain, you just shut up. You didn't say anything. And that Cloak of Invisibility meant that I was pretty much friendless. But what I did realize is that I had a great affinity with animals. And we had a family dog called Weissler. She was a little dachshund. And I talked to her. And the other thing is, it gets you into your head. And I had imaginary friends.
Yeah.
I was in my room most of the time in the house, in my bedroom, and I would have this extraordinary imagination. And the other thing that invisibility did was it made me disassociate, because when the abuse was happening,
Yeah.
I went elsewhere. I disassociated. All these things
Yes.
I am thankful for now, but as I grew up, they didn't serve me, because of course life isn't like that. You need to participate in life.
Yes.
You need to be a part of life to get the most out of it. And I'll leave it at that for you to ask
Yeah.
the questions that you want. But yeah, that was my cloak of invisibility.
Well, and that cloak of invisibility can both protect you and can lock you in your own jail cell.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing about trauma people that I've met and talked with is they did not realize they hold the key to their own freedom because they did the cloak of invisibility. They may not call it that, but that's what they did. But they never realized they held the key for their own freedom. Did you finally get to that point where you realize I can step out of this anytime I want to?
Well, the interesting thing was, it wasn't until I was 57, and I've reached my 60th birthday latter part in October of last year. And at 57, it was odd what happened. There was a small catalyst, a just slightly different thing, and it brought me to absolute meltdown. And often it's the small things that do that. And in this case was no different. And I literally didn't want to be here anymore. I was going to do away with myself.
Oh,
I'd spent one too many nights crying myself to sleep and waking up crying. I didn't know why I used to do this, because obviously it was my trauma that was being held in my body.
Yeah.
And at 57, it got to the point where, and I want to say God, but could be, you might say your higher power,
Yep.
the universe.
Yep.
It could be a religious God. It could be a God of your understanding. But that guide took over. And it took me to a position of which I'd never done before. My adage was, I will never have counseling because I have a nervous breakdown. And it took the nervous breakdown to do counseling. I mean, really, you couldn't make this up.
Well, because sometimes you need the release valve. You need to just let go and let it fly. And it comes out all different directions, all different ways. You cannot control it. When you finally, the dam breaks, the dam's going to break.
Well, do you know what? You've just said the two words, let go.
Yeah.
But to let go, you need to trust. Let go and trust God. Let go and trust the universe. Let go and trust the higher being. Let go and trust something outside of yourself, something that's not a person, something that isn't somebody else in the physical realm.
Yes.
Because what I understood at that moment is I was guided, divinely guided, to go to the computer, to open it up amidst my tears, and literally the mascara looked like a clown. All my makeup had dissolved all over my face. I was shaking. I was trembling. I didn't want to be here anymore. I opened up the lid of my computer and I typed in counselors near me on Google.
And how
That's
many
what
did
I
you
did.
find? Curious. How many popped up? 1, 2, or more than a dozen?
It took me through to a portal of a magazine. And literally, this is how I did my due diligence. The person's name who was at the top, it came as Amy. The names were done by the first name in alphabetical order. Amy, being A, came up. I rang her. Now, here's the thing. This is where the divine intervention came in. Amy is constantly with clients, or she has to decompress after she's had her time with her clients. And she doesn't use her mobile phone during those periods. Now, I would have called her either right in the middle of a session or right in the middle of her downtime, and she took the call. This is, as I said, if we tried to plan it like this, it wouldn't work. This is why I say let go and trust. And from there, that's when my journey of triumph over trauma started to occur.
Well, I'm going to go back to something you said at the beginning, because was this generational trauma? Was this generational abuse that your family was in a cycle and it kind of just continued down on you? Was that part of your backstory?
Well, now, this is the thing after the journey. Very insightful question. Thank you. This is beautiful. I hadn't looked at my parents as people. I'd looked at my parents, as mum and dad. And therefore, I'd projected a role onto my parents as people that was, to be honest, unachievable. And I blamed them for everything. I took no responsibility of my own. I used to say, this has happened to me because of what my parents did to me. This happened because of the abuse that I suffered. All of this was standing there saying, I hadn't grown up from Debra at like 4 or 5 years old. That's where my emotional maturity had stopped. I still believed in that sense in Father Christmas as a kid. I still believed the fairy godmother would wave her magic wand and make it all okay.
Well,
I didn't realize that I was a pivotal part in the process. But talking about the ancestral stuff, because I was so wrapped up in this orbit of my own making, in my cloak of invisibility, I hadn't thought, as others might do, of, well, why is this happening? What happened to my parents as people in former generations that has perpetrated this outcome of abuse? And I'm not excusing anything, but the reason why I forgive them is because I then had the courage through the nervous breakthrough to stand as my own person, as a mature adult, as scary as that was, and say, you know what, these people did things because of what happened to them, and they never addressed it either. And then you think, well, if that happened to them, it's like a domino effect.
Yes.
What happens then? Or a butterfly flying its wings and rippling into all the ripples.
Yes.
I'm now thinking, well, hang on. If it happened to my parent, was their parents? Were their parents? Were their parents?
Yes.
And my answer to you is absolutely. This was an ancestral issue. And you only had to listen to my family's stories about the tragic circumstances of former people in our family's history, losing all their money, being beaten up, being abused. And you think, hang on, there's a pattern. There's a pattern here that, because I was so tightly bound into this world of my own misery, into my own prison, I couldn't extend my mind. And when you think it's the shortest step, but it's the biggest step. It's like being
exactly.
in the
I'm just going to go there. Yeah, again, it's once you get to that point of realizing I can move forward, I'm allowed to move forward, I do hold the keys to my own prison. It's the biggest, gigantic step of your life to actually open up the cell door and peek outside and go, I'm coming out. And it's so powerful, people that talk about that moment of, I literally stepped out. Do you remember that first time you literally stepped out? The very first time you took that risk and said, I'm going to own my own stuff. I'm going to stand up, speak for myself, and I'm going to go for it.
And it was the biggest monumental discovery and journey. But you know what? When I discovered it and I found it, it was just like that. It went click. And once I knew it, I could never unknow it. I could never, ever go back. Neither would I want to. But it completely 180-degree turn, the polar opposite was shown to me. And it was like, oh, wow.
Well, I don't know if you've ever been, this is back in the 80s and 90s, very common here in the States, but there were paintings of whacked out images and designs. Now, my bad eyes don't let me see the amazing picture that's hidden in all that craziness. Other people could walk up there and go, Rich, don't you see the elephant? Rich, don't you see the gorgeous bird? And I'm like, it's crazy, stupid lines, buddy. That's all I see. And that's kind of what you're describing, how you could finally see the unseen from before.
What a beautiful way of expressing it. Absolutely. It was always there. I use an analogy. A lot of stuff comes from the Christian Bible. I was
Yes.
brought up in that faith. Whatever your religion is, you'll have a similar sort of thing, I'm sure.
Yep.
Is that once the veil has been lifted,
Yep.
you go from being blind to being sighted.
Yes.
And until that time, you can't fake it. You can't pretend.
No.
You can't say, I see it, because you go, I don't really see it. But, until that moment comes, and that's why the privilege and the honor and the love that I have for every single thing that happened to me by my abusers, by every single thing that I put myself through. I am thankful because it got to that part of my life where I saw the miracle. And I'm thankful for it. People go, that's perverse. Why would you be thankful for that abuse? It's because it got me to the state I am now, where I could see the miracle of what life is, what I am within life, and what my part to play is in life, what my calling, what my purpose, what my inner being is here to do. And that was, whoa, that was absolutely incredible.
So I'm gonna get to your work because this intersects with your business life, your career life, your podcast, and everything else. But when I was in full-time church ministry, I stumbled on the phrase. I did work with recovering ex-cons and broken people and abuse, and it was one of the most amazing, rich times of my life to get to know these people that more commonly are thrown aside. And I got time to get to know them. But the phrase was, "There's gold." And I got to sit with them and mine for the gold to bring them back to life. And I know you talk about rebirth. After all this trauma, you had a rebirth.
Absolutely.
But have you ever heard that phrase, mining for gold, that there's gold inside of you? When you were under the cloak of invisibility, when you were not seen, not heard, hiding, did you ever think there was going to be gold inside of you?
No, I never thought that. I thought that I was the culmination, that I've been put on this earth to be the person. I don't have any living brothers or sisters.
Mm-hmm.
That I was that cursed individual that had to take on all the trauma and die with it. I didn't think there was one ounce of worthiness, of anything of a reason. This is why I wanted to not be here anymore.
Right.
Because the pain was so intense. The suffering was so intense. The void was so big and so vast that I didn't have even the slightest piece of self-worth, self-love, self-awareness in that sense. I didn't like myself.
Oh,
I was the one that was, because I'd been told it and I believed it, I was the one who deserved this. I was the one who caused all the problems. If my mother hadn't had me, she would be absolutely free to do what she wanted. My father saying, if we hadn't had you, all the money we spend on you, for what? You're useless, you're worthless. And now I realize they were frightened of my power.
wow. Wow. Everyone, stick a pin on that, because that's an amazing concept to go from total fragile, hidden, invisible to I have power.
Mm.
That's like two different people frame of mind. How long did it take you to get to that point where you realize I have power?
It was in that instance where I saw a glimpse of the wonderful essence that I was. I realized that I had the Christos energy within me.
Mm-hmm.
I was a fractal, I was a fragment of God without being blasphemous or
Yeah.
without wonderful God that we have. I knew that that God was within me, that I was made in the image of that God. And it didn't take a religious teaching for me to know that.
So right now you have a company you founded. I'm going to take a template. I'm trying to say it right. Essentially?
Oh,
Limited.
congratulations. You
Essentially
are a
limited. There we go.
communication guru for a reason. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But
Essentially. Absolutely. So VIE in French is life. And then essentially is essential. And this is essential life, living an essential life. So that's what that's what it was there for. I don't know how many people get it, but
well,
yeah.
but then I know you talk about the business system because you have the personal life system, but you're a very heart-centered person now in all aspects. And you brought that heart-centered nature into the business world, which I think is way cool because we leave it separated. We leave a line between the two worlds. And you said, no, I'm now whole. I'm now centered and my heart is pumping. My life is pumping. I'm going to bring that into the business world. What made you do that?
Well, I couldn't not. And this is the thing. Now we go back to the cloak of invisibility.
Yeah.
The laughable thing is that cloak of invisibility, I wouldn't say two words to anybody. So I discovered my voice through this.
So
And
what was that voice? What was
that,
that? What was that? Shy, awkward, unconfident lady? Or is that like, again, blink of an eye, you're Wonder Woman?
right, okay. So what I used to adopt is a number of personas before. So it would be me, the Deborah in the social environment, the life and soul of the party, getting on in there and doing my thing and being this personality. And then I would adopt another for my business. So Deborah, the businesswoman, the hard striving, let's get this done, the power suited woman, off we go. That was Deborah. And then there would be the Deborah that would be the communicator, the one who would be speaking to groups of people. Well, this is exhausting because none of it came from the heart.
Right. And
And
you know what?
all the
We've all done that. We've all done that. Me included. I get every one of the things you just described. We all go through phases until we throw it out and say, I'm tired. I want to just be me.
absolutely. And when I discovered who I was, so the whole thing with the Sphere of Being and Sphere of Success podcast is I was invited onto somebody's podcast as things would happen, because you realize when you're in this state of thankfulness, of gratitude, of love, of being at one, circumstances, people, places, things, ideas come to you. You don't go out seeking them, they come to you. This is how we met.
Yes.
Through our wonderful friend Dame Lillian Walker. If we'd have tried to get together, well, they couldn't have planned it because I didn't know who you were.
Right.
Yeah. So this is the wonderful thing, and we're talking about letting go and trusting, and I would
Mhm.
say God here, but use your own, whatever that resonates with you. I realized that on these podcasts that I was being a guest on, I could speak eloquently from the heart about my experiences. And the guy who did the podcast said, have you ever thought about doing your own podcast? And I went, hey, no way, no way. And he went, well, there's very little difference between what you've been doing with me as a
Right.
guest to having your own. And you know what? I got this message. This little voice came in and said, Deborah, you said you'd surrendered. There's another thing, surrender with love and trust. You said you'd surrendered to be the mouthpiece and the vehicle and the vessel for us to use you to be the best version for other people and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but do I really have to do this? And the voice came back resounding, oh, yeah, you have to do it. So I thought, right, this is where fear locks us into our prison cell.
Yes.
I thought, what's the worst that could happen? It's terrible. It doesn't do anything. I'm laughed at. Well, I've been laughed at, I've been terrible, and things haven't happened before. So there's nothing new there.
Right.
So let's do this. Well, the wonderful thing is with having these podcasts, I have again get the chance to speak to yourself. I've been on an American radio show with 3.5 million listeners a month.
Yeah.
I'm asked to speak in places. I'm just doing something locally where I live in the UK for a whole group of business people. But the guests that come on my show then get the chance. I hold space for them to showcase them their truth, their message, their business. And then I also train people in how to do a brilliant podcast for publicity and profit, because a lot of people have podcasts, but they don't monetize them. And this is something which absolutely got me key here. There is nothing wrong with having and making money. There's nothing wrong with giving money and having an abundant flow of money in and out. And I realized I had a toxic relationship with money.
Yep.
And now I love money. I love what it can do. I love the abundance it can create, the choices that it can give, the way it can lift people out of poverty, how it can transform people. You can pay for a wonderful course. You can give to wonderful causes. You can live in a way which is healthy. You don't have to realize that you don't have to live on bad food anymore. You can live on organic food. All these things, you can take time out during your day to practice self-care, to go out for a walk with the dogs, to be with friends, whatever it is, spend more time with your children. This is what money can do for us.
So here you are, a passionate, driven, highly communicative storyteller. Did you ever think in your wildest dream, when you were under the cloak of invisibility, you would be doing what you just did right there, just firing with passion on what you love to talk about? Did you ever imagine that?
100% no.
Because you now are one of the voices. Again, I said at the beginning of the show, 12 million men and women each year are abused, cast aside, put on that cloak of invisibility. You are now a voice leading those people to freedom. When you think of that, what do you think about the fact that you now have opened up your life to help other people's life in a way that is very private, intimate, dangerous, but here you are doing it?
Do you know, I'm so humbled. I'm going to get emotional now.
I got the tissue box over here.
Yeah, you said you reduce people to tears on this show sometimes. And yeah, absolutely. I am so grateful. I'm so thankful. I'm so humbled to have been given this wonderful opportunity to be there as holding space for others, to have people on my show to help train this for people to transform their life and to add value to the people that they then have. And I do believe that this platform of podcasting is, again, you ripple effect with what you're doing. This touches millions of lives in a positive way. My message maybe could help somebody from making a decision which could change the rest of their lives.
Well,
Podcasting can bring people's businesses, their worthy causes, their personal education. It can just explode.
well, exactly, because there is something about unlocking the voice, unlocking the story, and when you finally let it out, you're almost like on fire. There's this thing of like, I'm doing this. I'm actually doing this. This is fun. I'm laughing about horrific, painful stories. I'm now having joy in telling and helping, and you're given a voice through streaming TV shows, podcasting, whatever you're doing. This has opened up a platform that everyone now can add their voice in a new, powerful way. People think it's just podcasting, stupid people talking about stupid stuff. But like you just said, it's really changing lives, impacting people, changing companies like you're doing. Did you ever think that you would be here now, 2 podcasts, not 1, 2 podcasts, elevating one of the toughest subjects to talk about? People don't want to talk about abuse, but here you are.
Well, in a way, I was so caught up and wrapped up in my own prison, in my own cloak of invisibility. You know, somebody could have literally, you talked about gold. Somebody could have said, I will give you gold. And I would have gone, what's the catch?
Right. Right.
And Winston Churchill said, most people see an opportunity, stumble over it and keep on walking. They won't look at the opportunity, because one has to have a mindset of, I'm worthy. I deserve this. I am the person who good things come to. Life happens for me, not to me. I am the master of my own destiny. I am the captain of my own ship. I am the leader of my own enterprise. And the buck stops with me. And I am the creator of my own reality. And if I don't like it, I can change it.
This has been great. I do want to share your website here, which, by the way, I do love the rip on Mary Poppins there. I absolutely love that. It's the coolest logo I've seen. So what are they going to find when they go to your website? What are they going to learn more about you here?
Well, they're going to learn primarily about the administration work that we do. But make no mistake, if you want to contact me on LinkedIn, and I have an email address, if that might be okay to share.
Absolutely.
Because,
give it out there. Come on.
thank you. It's my initials, because I'm Debra Blackman. So it's DB and then @ and you see V essentially there. That's VIESSENTIALLY.com. Because I do all of the training and all of the podcast hosting my personal self, I get involved with that on a one-to-one basis. You're not in a class, you're not with a group of other people. Whether you're on the podcast, it's individual. Whether you're on the training, it's individual, because everybody has a slightly different strength and everybody has a slightly different vulnerability, because I don't use the word weakness. We can be vulnerable without being weak. And ultimately, I work with people on that level. So do be in touch, because that in itself isn't so much on my website. But if you're screaming and tearing your hair out and thinking I've not got enough hours in the day, then that might be also a place to get some support from as well. And you can contact me there too.
What would you like to say to people today as we wind up? People may be listening that have been traumatically abused, they've had other situations that have just pulverized their life. What would you like to say to give a voice of hope as we wind down today?
You are a miracle. You are loved. You are blessed. You are seen, and you are heard for the beautiful person that you are. And you have God's light shining inside you. And it just takes a moment. And that can be absolutely all it takes for that light to shine through and rise in your truth and your power to be the most amazing individual that you know you are already, but that you stand there in your truth. And that is your biggest protection that you will ever, ever have, with an open heart, with love. And I love you because I love people. I love humanity. I love with, and love is a very powerful word. It's not fluffy bunny rabbits and rainbows. This love empowers, and everybody is worthy of that love.
Debra Blackman, thanks for being on Rock the Stage today. This has been a blast. Continued success as you reach out and serve so many people that need to hear your message of they can take it off and they can move forward to find freedom and even rebirth, the way you talk about. Thanks for being here today on Rock the Stage.
Thank you, Rich. It's been an absolute pleasure.
So Rock the Stage every Sunday night, different guests, different area. We go from the celebrity to the deeply personal lifestyle like this. And they're highly unscripted conversations because we want to go where the heart goes, like Debra was talking about. This is our heart-centered conversation. It's fun to have people share something that they never thought they would ever share. Debra's now doing that on a regular basis, by the way. She's now sharing on a regular basis in a way that she never, ever thought she would ever do. Not just one podcast, but 2 podcasts, and then she helps business leaders, and she's willing to do 101s. That's a great thing. Happy 2025. The brand new year is kicking off on Rock the Stage. Please subscribe. Please join us. Ask your questions. Come back every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time for another edition of the Rock the Stage Show.